Good morning, everyone. I hope you're well on this lovely sunny morning. Do say hello if you can see me. We're going to be talking all about how to get your child's needs met this morning. So if you are watching, do let me know where you're watching from. Say hello. I don't bite. I'm really looking forward to this one today. I've got loads to tell you. So let me see who's watching. Morning, Emma Tooby Johnston. How strange that you're watching there and can also hear me over there. Morning, Joanne. Morning, Sam. Morning, Becky. Do let me know where you're watching from as well. Um, let's see who's furthest. Although if you are from a different country, I'm not entirely sure that our laws here are going to be relevant to you, but you might find something interesting. Now then, before I come to all your comments, like I say, if you do see me, if you can see me, do say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. Now we're talking today all about how to get your child's needs met. And so please do tag anybody that you think will find this interesting. If anybody's spoken to you in the playground or over a coffee and said, "Oh, I'm having such a tough time at the moment," tag them, share the video with them, because it's going to be really, really useful for you. Oh, there we go. We've got loads of comments now. Oh, Emma is watching from down the room. So far, she's definitely the closest. I think there may be somebody closer though. Oh my goodness, there's loads of you. Right, okay. Morning, Soraya. Morning, Rachel from Bedfordshire. You've got a nice local authority. Um, morning, Jade. Morning, Una. Morning, Anne from Burnley. Oh, that's where Jordan North comes from, isn't it? Slight obsession with Jordan North here. Morning, Kate from Mid Wales. We'll be touching on a little bit of Welsh stuff today. Morning, Jade from Lincoln. Oh, the comments just jumped. Hi, Lucy from Plymouth. Soraya's in Milton Keynes. Soraya, I feel like I know you now because you always watch my videos. I feel very flattered. Hi, Amy from Lancashire. Morning, Becky from sunny Suffolk. And Hazel from Liverpool. Belinda from Cheltenham, Alex from Solihull. I thought you said, Jess said, I'm the closest, which she is. She's just there. I thought you said, I'm in the closet. I was like, well, that's a bit weird. Do you want to come out? Morning, Debbie from Liverpool. Oh, morning, Vicky. Morning, Nicole. Morning, Tom. Morning, Alex on YouTube. We're getting all the lovely comments. Vicky's from Trafford, Kate is from Reading, Dandelions Girls Group. That sounds amazing. Please post more information about who you are from Newcastle upon Tyne. So I'm going to get started and not look at the comments for a minute. I will come back to your comments, so do keep them coming. Now, some of you might already know me. Sorry if I'm constantly on your newsfeed. I'm the founder of Sunshine Support. And my name is Chrissa. I'm really delighted to be helping you this morning, and I can't believe that I'm in my 8th year of doing this at Sunshine Support. It's like the longest job as an ADHDer. This is the longest job I've ever had. To give you a bit of background on who I am, for those who are sort of first-time watchers, I'm a parent of 4 children. And I've been doing this send parent lark for a very, very, very long time. I'm actually in my 3rd decade, which makes me sound absolutely ancient, doesn't it? And I know, I just use really good collagen, which is why I don't look that old. Now, this morning, I'm going to be talking all about how to get your child's needs met. Because I'm very aware that we're all at different stages. You're going to be watching every single one of you whilst you'll have empathy for the next person. You will be at a different stage in your journey. And so I think that this particular video is going to be really, really useful for those who are at the beginning of their journey or they're sort of struggling in the depths of their journey. But for some sort of veteran send parents like me, I think you might just find some nuggets of information in here that might be, it's not necessarily going to be groundbreaking. I hope you've heard it all before, but you might find by going back to basics, you might feel sort of more enthused, or you might pick up something that you'd forgotten. I think it's always helpful in everything, whether it's your work life, personal life, to sometimes go back to basics, isn't it? So I'll have a quick look to see now who else has joined us. Oh my goodness, there's loads of you. This is fantastic. Carl Parker from Holmfirth. That sounds posh. Joe from Lincoln. Stacey from Manchester. Good morning. Claire from Telford. Oh God, there's loads. There's loads of you. So before I get told off, because I do get told off for just sitting here saying hello to people, I better get started. So trying to get your child's needs met can be really, really tricky. Okay. And one of the things I always talk about is when we have children, we have this very romantic view, don't we, of, creating a mini me. And by mini me, I mean mini me. I wanted to create a mini me. I've got 4 girls. None of them look like me. None of them. So that didn't come true. But I think one of the other things that we sort of romanticize about is this beautiful journey of parenthood that looks just like they do on Instagram. And you get to a point where, your children grow up and you're best friends and you do lovely things like go on holiday together because you all get on. And then the reality kicks in. And what we never planned was this send journey. And whilst I'm saying that I would never change any of my children for the world, but I would remove their struggles if I could, because nobody wants to see their children struggle. And they also don't want to have to face that struggle and that fight themselves, because it's really traumatizing. Now, I'm going to be giving you some practical things this morning that you can go away and do. But I'm not negating the fact that it's going to be tricky. It's going to be hard. Get your tribe. That's my first bit of advice, actually, before we get started, is find your tribe. Find those other people that get it, that you don't have to explain it to. That's something we do quite well here at Sunshine Support, because we've got cuppa and chats. We've got them in person in Derby and in South Wales, and we've also got them online as well. So you never feel like you're alone, and you never feel like you're being judged, because those in the room with you, whether it's a virtual room online or a real room, they get it, even though they may not be in the same boat as you, but they're definitely in the same storm. So they really understand it. They can really empathize. And you will need that as part of your self-care to stay strong throughout. Now, I didn't pay any attention to my self-care when I did this first time around, and the result of which was enormous amounts of trauma. And I had a stroke in my mid-30s. I don't recommend it to anyone. So self-care, looking after your well-being, is not selfish. Always put yourself first. Don't believe those parents who say, oh, I put my kids first every time. It's not healthy to do that. If you're not actually looking after yourself, you can't serve others. It's that oxygen mask on a plane, isn't it? Anyway, my first bit of practical advice for anyone watching this morning is that you really need to understand the earlier you get support for your child, the better. The earlier they can learn who they are, the earlier they can find their identity, the better. Prolonged not knowing can be really damaging to mental health. And we know that actually the earlier we can get targeted help for our children, the better their self-esteem will be, and the better their long-term outcomes will be. So how do I know this? Who am I to give you this information? Well, I've already mentioned I've got ADHD myself. I was diagnosed at age 40. And what happened as a result of not knowing was enormous amounts of mental health struggles. I call it my Lamborghini brain with vintage mini brakes. And that brain, as remarkable as, I really love it now, but it really did nearly get me into a lot of trouble, both with myself and with others. Yet I was an exemplary student. I went unnoticed at school. I've done a Facebook Live actually on this before. So the team will add the links to this previous live, because I don't want to go through it all again. You won't want to hear that again. But if you want to hear more about my ADHD journey, definitely check out that video. But I masked and I fawned in school. I developed selective mutism. Me, the one that's talking on videos all the time. I had selective mutism. I still have selective mutism. If I don't feel safe, I go mute. If I don't feel safe, I can't meet my own needs. It's more than just not being able to talk. And as a result of that, I did come to great harm, enormous amounts of harm, which caused enormous amounts of trauma. Now, had I known earlier that I had ADHD, and if my parents had understood this, by the way, that wasn't a thing in the 80s. We never really talked about stuff like that. But if I'd known about it and I'd had targeted support earlier, maybe things wouldn't have been so difficult and bleak for me. We'll never know. We will never know. But all I know is that I wish I'd known sooner. And so with that information, I made it my mission to make sure that I'm sharing this with others, to make sure that I'm encouraging and inspiring others to get those assessments done early, to understand needs, get that identity in place early doors. Now, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have lived in so much shame. I think that was the thing that was the most traumatizing thing, that I knew that I was different to others. I knew that I wasn't thinking the same. It was hugely damaging to my mental health because I never felt like I fit in. And shame was an enormous part of that. So one of my children, so coming to this, from a parent point of view, one of my children was diagnosed with autism ADHD in the PDA profile at age 12. And she lived her entire life until that point thinking she was neurotypical. She felt deep shame. She felt trauma. And she just felt really disconnected. And she never felt like she'd fit in. Another one of my children was diagnosed age 5. And well, I mean, you've all seen the result of that early diagnosis. She did her own Facebook Live age 10 on Sunday, which was eventful. Kept me on the edge of my seat. She managed to get, I mean, the team were actually playing bingo as to what topics she would manage to cover. And I think some of the things that she mentioned were not on there, but she's wild. But I think that you'll be able to see, if you want to see that video, by the way, just comment and we'll share the link with you. But you'll see from her presentation on that video, she is full of authentic self-confidence. She has bundles of self-esteem, and she has a real faith and belief in her identity. She doesn't see herself as less, and she's really resilient as a result of that, because she's always known about her diagnosis, about her identity. To her, it's not a label, it's who she is, and it's how she processes the world around her. She's also a remarkable self-advocate because she's so confident. And so I guess the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? You've got one child who was late diagnosed, who really suffered with the shame. And it was more than just an experience. She really suffered. And then next time I had a child who was presenting differently, I got in there really, really quickly. And that's made an enormous difference. Now, I'm sure there are other things in there that make a difference as well. But even if we just go on those 2 experiences of diagnosis and assessments, it really is remarkable, the difference in the 2 experiences. So early assessment, early diagnosis, early targeted support is vital for our children. Now, if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh God, but my child's older, have I just now failed them? No. You're watching this, and that's really, really important. Don't fear. But this is your sign to get it sorted. And one of the things I have a real bugbear is that I vow to myself that I would never say the school system has failed my children, because the information is out there and I can do this by myself. But how do we do that? How do we do it? So before I go on to how do we get assessments and help, let me tell you about the myth that is, you can't get any help until your child has a diagnosis. I hear this from teachers all the time. They say things like, well, they're on the pathway, and so until we get the outcome, there's really not much we can do. Well, let me tell you, and let me know if this is, let me know if this sounds familiar to you. Let me tell you, it's absolute nonsense. So let's just take an example. Little Joey. Little Joey is 7, and he's showing expressive and receptive language difficulties. So this is expressive is language out, receptive is language in. He's showing great difficulties. He's socially anxious. He sometimes goes mute. He struggles with communication. He has very, very little self-belief, low self-esteem. He has difficulty with toileting. He's still in pull-ups at night. So school have made the assumption that Joey must be autistic. So they've done a SPOA, which is a single point of access referral. They reassure that, Joey's mum, little Joey, 7-year-old Joey, they say to his mum, now he's on that pathway. And so let's just wait. We'll just wait. We'll see how things go. When he gets that diagnosis, or if he gets that diagnosis, then we'll help. But until then, we'll muddle through. This makes me so unbelievably frustrated for a number of reasons. And by all means, if you can, if this sounds familiar, let me know if it makes you frustrated and why. So, A, autism is not the only presentation that they should be looking at. The description of Joey actually matches that of a child with DLD, developmental language disorder. If this sounds like something you want to learn more about, by the way, again, comment DLD. We'll send you a link because we've got a webinar coming up on this. But the presentation that we described in Joey, the expressive language skills, the receptive language skills, the social anxiety, the fact he goes mute, that does also describe a child with DLD. Now, I'm not saying it would be one or the other. What I'm saying is we need to assess for both. It also sounds like he's got some sort of sensory processing difficulties, perhaps. And again, with toileting difficulties, we really need to rule out the physical aspect first. So referrals need to be made to paediatricians to just rule out there's nothing physically going wrong there. But potentially it could be a sensory processing difficulty. Now, by putting Joey on the pathway for autism assessments, you're missing so many other things that could be supported really quickly short term. And that would improve the short term, medium term, and long term outcomes. So by putting Joey only on one pathway, you're running the risk as well of it not being autism. It's not up to a teacher to decide which pathway a child should go on in terms of diagnostic assessments. And so potentially there is a risk here that Joey will be on this never-ending waiting list for an autism assessment, only to be told it's not autism. And by the way, I've spoken to the clinicians at several NHS trusts who tell me that actually a much lower number than we think of the assessments they do for autism actually come out with an autism diagnosis. Quite often they're sent to them and it doesn't even meet the criteria. So by leaving Joey on this, never-ending waiting list for an autism assessment to the NHS, and then it comes out that actually little Joey's not autistic, but we're only screening for autism today, so we can't really tell you what it could be, but perhaps Joey needs a speech and language assessment. You've waited years to be told that. And then you're no further forward, really, in finding out. You're now going to have to go onto another waiting list for a speech and language therapist. And by the way, I'm talking here about using the public sector. Of course, if you decide to go down the private sector route and you have the cash to be able to do that, by all means, ping us a message because we can give you some really some links to some reputable people. But it can get quite costly. Now, another thing that really frustrates me is that the SPOA is not the only way of getting a neurodevelopmental assessment. So neurodevelopmental would be looking at things like autism and ADHD and maybe both, a combined profile. And I think what disappoints me is that schools really need to be educating parents on the NHS right to choose scheme. Now, I've spoken to loads of Senkos about this who just say to me, well, it's not right for our parents because they can't pay. To which I then reply, they don't have to pay. They choose a provider like Dr. Judy Eaton at Help for Psychology, for instance, and the NHS pay. So Dr. Judy Eaton runs an organisation, a company called Help for Psychology. They're a fantastic private organisation who do autism, ADHD and combined assessments. Now, yes, you can pay Dr. Judy to do your assessments, but essentially NHS England are committing to pay because they are a trusted provider. And so it's really frustrating when I'm saying this to Senkos and they're like, no, it sounds too good to be true. Now, the waiting times are months rather than years. So again, the Senkos, all they come back with is, it just sounds too good to be true. And so actually the parents never get to hear about these processes. Or this particular process. So they just get left on this never-ending list for an NHS appointment, you know, and remember that appointment is not an assessment. That original appointment, that initial appointment is an appointment. You might then be waiting another few years until you get the assessment. I don't know. Every trust is different. Now, if you want to learn more about the right to choose pathway, please do tune in. A month today, I'm hosting a chat on here on Facebook and YouTube with Dr. Judy Eaton herself. And she's going to be talking all about the right to choose scheme, because it does essentially mean you can get a private assessment paid for by the NHS as long as your child is aged 6 to 18 and based in England. So it really is that simple. In fact, do check out Help for Psychology. The team will put the link actually now to the Help for Psychology page, which tells you more about the right to choose scheme. Do give it a Google, or of course, you know, tune in next month and fire away in terms of your questions, because Dr. Judy Eaton is wonderful. She's so personable. I really adore her, and I really, really respect her professionally as well. So being able to chat to her about the problems the parents are facing would be great. So the current wait in some NHS trusts for regular observational assessments, in some trusts is 5 to 7 years. Let me know what it is in your area. So effectively, if it is 5 to 7 years, some areas are 2 years, sometimes some areas are like 8, 9, 10 years. There is a way to bypass this. Now, if you're already on the assessment pathway and you're waiting, you can still use the right to choose scheme. Again, we're going to be talking about all these myths and the truths with Dr. Judy Eaton next month. So make sure that you RSVP to that event, and we'll remind you nearer the time. So I see some comments coming in now that it's 1 to 2 years in this particular lady's area. 2 years for ADOS assessment, 4 years in Oxfordshire. Now, I was speaking to somebody, a clinician, a little while ago now, and they were telling me they work in an NHS trust, and they were saying that they have a waiting list of 3,000 children, but they can only see 2 a week. So that gives a little bit of perspective, doesn't it? The team have shared the information actually on the Help for Psychology page, so do check that out. Becca has said she's been waiting for a paediatric assessment for 14 months so far. It's really, really frustrating. Anyway, another thing that clinicians do tell me that they're really disappointed about. So not only are they disappointed in the system for, you know, not allowing so many assessments to take place. And by the way, the government are constantly saying they're throwing more money at this, but we're not seeing that on the ground. I don't know what the difference is. You know, when they're talking to us about, oh, we're going to, you know, invest 13 million in assessments. Where is it? Or 1 million. I don't know. They just throw numbers out all the time. Oh, Claire on YouTube wondering if right to choose is in Wales. Great question. NHS Wales do not do the right to choose scheme, as far as I know. It's just NHS England. So I recommend you all just move over the border. I'm from Wales and I live in England, and I'm not moving back for this reason. Although you do get free prescriptions in Wales, don't you? So it swings and roundabouts, but it is really, really sad actually that this isn't available in Wales. So going back to the clinicians I was just speaking about, one of the things that makes them really, really frustrated is not only do a lot of the children not necessarily meet the criteria for their assessments, so they seldom, or they don't always, should I say, come out with an autism or ADHD diagnosis, but they're also really disappointed in the lack of intervention offered and provided to the children whilst they're on these enormous waiting lists, because there is plenty that can be done whilst a child is on a waiting list. And remember, that waiting list is shorter on the right to choose scheme. I know I keep plugging it. I'm not on commission. I just think it's a really good thing that we need to know about. Now, one of our staff members here, Lindsay is a very, very, very experienced head teacher, and she also understands how funding works in mainstream schools. Together with our team of educators here, because we've got Kelly Jarvis, who you've seen lots on Facebook Lives. Kelly is also a very experienced head teacher from a specialist provision. an independent specialist provision. We also have Gabby. Gabby is used to run a language provision. We've got Emily, who was a Senko. So we've got tons and tons of experience here at Sunshine on how the system works and how schools can implement reasonable adjustments with zero budget. This is not about money. This is about understanding. This is about respect. It's about a cultural shift. It's about a cultural change. Now, what we do here is we offer a fantastic service to schools. So if you know any schools who do seem to want to help, or perhaps they don't want to help, but they really should be helping, particularly in those sort of assessments and wait and see periods, really they need to be speaking to us so we can show them how to do this, because there's plenty that can be done so that the child is not suffering. Because what happens is, whilst that child is waiting for the assessment to take place, whilst they're waiting for the diagnosis or the outcome of any sorts of assessments, then they are sort of existing in a world where they feel different. And that can be hugely traumatizing, like I mentioned earlier on. So we want to minimize that. We want to promote their well-being. We want to promote their self-identity and also document their needs and meet them, because the more documentation we can do, the better it will be later on, particularly when we're going for statutory assessments. So there are plenty of ways to get diagnostic assessments. They can be very lengthy. You know, you can go through your GP, you can go to school, and get them to refer. But I do think the right to choose scheme is going to be the most thorough and the quickest. You know, if anybody's ever seen one of Dr. Judy Eaton's or one of Helpful Psychology's assessment reports, it's not going to just be a letter. It's going to be a report, and you're going to see the areas of need in there. So they're really, really good reports. So how do we get assessments then that actually, you know, putting the diagnostic assessments to one side, how do we get assessments that actually assess our children's needs, you know, whether they have a diagnosis or not? So I think, oh, Becca says, how can I access right to choose? Is through your GP, but we have already put a link to the right to choose scheme with Dr. Judy Eaton in the chat. So do check it out. And yes, it's age 6 to 18 in England. But I've detailed everything else. So by all means, if there's anything else you want to know about the right to choose scheme, after I finish today, just watch the video again, because I've put lots of information in there. I think it's really important to know that the diagnosis is very important, although whilst it is very important, like I mentioned earlier, it's also very important for us to understand it's not a label, it's an identity. However, what is more important than understanding that identity or having that identity and that diagnosis is understanding and establishing a child's needs. And this is where the statutory assessment process comes in. Because in England, it's the EHC needs assessment process. In Wales, it's the statutory assessment process for the IDP. And I must say, I am tasked with creating a lot of resources here at Sunshine. So, for instance, I've got this one that I've created in line with our, or in conjunction with our advocates here. And this is a fantastic timeline for an EHC needs assessment. You can download this on our website, by the way. And if you're in Derby or you pop into Derby or you can get to us, we have the hard copies in our hub. You can come and take one. There's no charge. So these are for you guys. They're absolutely brilliant. So the EHC needs assessment process, as difficult as it sometimes feels to navigate in England, is actually quite clear cut. So whilst the process never, ever seems to follow this, at least as parents, you know what to expect, and you can also hold them to account when the local authority doesn't do it. So that's that. Now, I've tried for months to create one similar for Wales, and it's not possible because I need about 20 of these pages. They have not made the ALN system in Wales, so ALN, Additional Learning Needs, which is the Welsh version of SEN. They've not made that very easy for parents at all, given this is meant to be a parent-friendly process. And parents often they either give up, or they need an advocate, or they need some real detailed input from people. And so I do recommend, if you are in Wales, we do a lot of work on the Welsh system. I just can't seem to fit everything you need to do on a page. But we will be covering the Welsh system in great detail next week, actually. in person. So we know that Welsh families really love in-person events. So my team and I will be, well, most of them are in Wales already. I'll be venturing home because that's where I'm from. And there's going to be 5 or even 6 of us holding an event in Aberdare in South Wales where you can come and learn more about that IDP process because it isn't as straightforward as we would like it to be. So my team will actually share a link about our Welsh services because we do regular cuppa and chats and everything as well. But anyway, I'll crack on. The statutory process is one that is vital, really. You don't need to have a diagnosis. You do not need a diagnosis to enter the statutory assessment process for an EHCP or an IDP. So that is also a big myth because we get told all the time we can't get help until we have a diagnosis, and that is nonsense. Now, if you believe, if you're in England, I'm going to go with the English process here because otherwise I'm going to be here for another 4 hours if I try and do the Welsh process. But if you believe your child may have special educational needs, so SEN, or sometimes referred as SEND, so special educational needs and disabilities, then start preparing your application for your EHC needs assessment. You don't have to wait for school. Now, it's useful for them to be in agreement with you. It's useful for them to be on board, but you don't have to wait for them to be in agreement. If you believe your child may have SEN or may need SEN provision, if you can evidence those 2 points, then you've met the legal threshold really for an assessment. Okay, and it's all about the assessment. So get that application in. So there's a nice comment that's come in on YouTube. If you've watched The Traitors, I'm not Charlotte from The Traitors. I am genuinely Welsh. There's been a comment, are you sure you're from Wales because your accent sounds more Midlands? Thank you very much. I am from South Wales. I moved to the Midlands 30 years ago, and I am trying my best to hang on to the last little bits of that accent, okay? Thank you. So you don't have to be in agreement with school. Get that application in for an assessment. So it's called an EHC needs assessment request. Sometimes people call it an ECNA. I always think of Stranger Things when I think of ECNA because I go to VECNA. But anyway, as much evidence as you can find as possible. Now, this could be assessments. You might have had your child assessed by a speech and language therapist, an occupational therapist. It could be that you've had an assessment from an educational psychologist. Now, another myth, talking about educational psychology, is that your child needs to have an ed psych assessment in order to apply. They don't, okay? It would be helpful, but they don't need to have that, okay? It might be school reports. We had one particular family we were supporting. Their child had never made progress, made it to age 11, was still reading at age 5. The school had never picked it up, never really done much with this SEN. The child was on the SEN register. That was it. However, whilst no assessments had been forthcoming, when we sort of swept in and started helping the family, actually, what we discovered was there was loads of evidence in the school reports that documented that the child was having difficulties. So actually, the school had done us a favour, even though they were very much on board with the parents doing the assessment request. Our question was, why have you never done it before, to the school? But, don't discount your school reports. Anything can be evidence. So dig deep, go back and see what you've got in your folder or bags of goodies when it comes to your kids, because there will be evidence. Now, actually, we've got a 2-hour course on this ready to watch on EHC needs assessment requests and IDP requests on our Sunshine Academy. Make sure you watch that because it's ready and available for you. So when you leave this Facebook and YouTube live this morning, you can jump straight onto that course and learn more about it. My team will add a link for the Sunshine Academy because it is a brilliant resource. We've also got an in-person workshop for writing the application letter better, a better letter in April, which gives you a chance actually, because it being in April gives you a bit of chance to get your evidence together. So if you'd like to come to that, do comment below. If you'd like us to, help you write that application, it's a full day workshop and we do spend time with you making sure that letter is, you get off to a good start in terms of writing the letter. We limit the numbers for obvious reasons because we want to spend the time with you. So there aren't many spaces, but if you'd like to come along, do comment. Now, my top tip for applying for an EHCP is not to use the forms that the local authority give you. Number one, I always have concerns about data protection because they ask you for too much information on the forms than they need, which actually is a breach of GDPR because you should only ever request the information that you need. Now, when you look at the question that they're asking themselves, when you apply for or you request an EHC needs assessment, you have to meet those two bits of criteria. Your child may have SEN and may need SEN provision. Now, when they give you these forms, they're asking for all sorts of information that actually they don't need to make that judgment, to make that decision. So it always worries me when parents are forced to fill in the forms, and they always get you to focus on the positives as well, which essentially, I know it's lovely to focus on the positives, but by focusing on the positives, you're never going to get any help. So we always say, write a letter. Now, we've got a template letter on our website that you can download and edit. It's a brilliant resource and also gives you a good starting point so that, because a lot of parents, if you're anything like me, you'll look at it and go, where do I start? But it's really important when you write the letter that you not only describe your child's additional needs, you evidence it, like I just mentioned, but also you cross-reference to the law. Because the law then will give you, the legislation surrounding this will give you the reasons why they should assess. And you can make that letter so much more robust than the form. So don't fall victim to the form thing. Don't also fall victim to the online hub. A lot of local authorities are saying you can only apply through the online hub. Nowhere in legislation or law does it say you have to apply through an online hub. In fact, if you look at the Equality Act, they're actually creating a barrier to you getting the support. So if you've got ADHD or dyslexia and they're giving you additional things to do, it's not particularly inclusive. So disregard all that nonsense. Go with a letter. Local authorities hate me for a reason. I'm really sorry, but this is the process and the government has set it out. It's not me. I didn't make the rules. Don't shoot the messenger. Anyway, I also hear many parents say, school are failing my child. I mentioned this earlier. It's something that I never wanted to say. This is why I took matters into my own hands. And I think along the way, I've never been rude, and teachers have often liked what I've come up with. I've been penalised probably twice for it in very difficult ways. I won't go into that today because parental blame is a whole other thing. But on the whole, as long as you approach the school in a certain way, I actually think that, they will welcome your input. They will welcome you understanding your rights and self-advocating and also advocating for your child. Now, if you want a little bit of help understanding how to address schools and how to bridge that gap between home and school, we've got some brilliant courses again on the Sunshine Academy. So by being on there, you're going to learn everything you need to know. You'll just be like the best parental advocate ever. You just need to learn how to do it yourself. So I was told with both my kids who have EHCPs that neither of them would get an EHCP by the Senko of their schools. One of my children ended up, so the local authority said she needed to be in a mainstream school, which she hadn't accessed for nearly 2 years. She actually ended up at a 52-week waking day. So that's a specialist residential school where they learn within their waking day. She's incredibly bright. Her needs academically would never have been able to be met in a mainstream school. But also she had a lot of complex needs as well. Having autism and ADHD and the PDA profile is an incredibly complex mix. And again, if you want to learn about any of this, we have courses, straight enough, on our Sunshine Academy, so do sign up. She got told she would never have an EHCP. She got an EHCP. We went to the High Court in the end. She got her 52-week waking day provision at a highly specialist flagship school. Very, very pleased about that. My other child was also told that she would not have an EHCP. And I felt quite offended, actually, that time, because her Senko said, she won't get an EHCP, even though she knew what I did for a living. So I made it my business and my mission to get that EHCP in place, which, of course, you've heard from her because she was the one that was doing it. It was Ridley. She was the one that was doing the Facebook Live, and she talked all about the provision in her EHCP, which has really changed her life. She's had her EHCP since age 5. She's now 10, prepping for senior school. And yeah, it's remarkable. And in fact, the TA she's got working with her this year is the same TA who was working with her in year 1 when she got her diagnosis and her EHCP was put in place. And she said, oh my goodness, Chrissa, she's unrecognizable. You know, the strides she's made. She's made such a remarkable difference. And she's done that. She feels like she's got the ownership on it. She's like, oh yeah, you know, the professionals, this is my daughter, by the way, the professionals have been really helpful, but you know, this is down to me. And I love that she's taking ownership of her own improvement and development. And she's loving life and she loves school. And so that's amazing. But I made it my mission that the school system was never going to fail my lot. And by the way, that is a daily thing that you have to keep on top of. I feel very proud that 2 of my children in particular are incredible self-advocates. One has gone into school today with on a mission that she's going to sort out a friendship difficulty that she has, and she's self-advocating with her sort of head of pastoral care. And she wants her to mediate this difficulty that she's experiencing with a particular friend. And I feel so proud that she feels that she can do that, you know. And she's also made it her mission. The school system won't fail her, although she's got a very good head teacher. So anyway, I digress. You know, have I got ADHD? If you didn't know before, you know now. So that statutory process of assessment should assess your child's speech, language, and communication needs. It should, if relevant, assess their sensory needs, their physical needs, and also the way that they learn. So that would be the educational psychologist. Now, when you write that letter of request, you can request these assessments. They don't have to do them, but if you have evidence that they're needed and eventually you end up having to get a little bit firm with them through an appeal process, it doesn't really look very good on them if they've ignored your requests. Now, what they also can't do is say, well, you know, you've requested an ed psych appointment. We know assessment. We know we've got to give one, but, you know, we haven't got any. So there's going to be a massive delay. They can't do that. Okay, so this is where this resource is going to really, really help you, because what it tells you is if they do that, if they do that nonsense and say, oh, we can't do this, you know, they delayed it for whatever reason, there's stuff you can do. And we go through it in great detail on here. And we can help you with that. You don't need a solicitor for any of this, by the way. We can help you with all of this process. Now, along with that particular resource, you are going to need quite a lot of information to accompany you on this journey. Now, I call this SEND parent tax or ALN parent tax. There's stuff that we have to learn that regular parents of children with no particular additional needs, they don't have to know this stuff. They don't know about the law. They don't know about any of it. Sadly, we have to, okay? And that's our dedication to our children. That's us as being fantastic parents. We have to upskill. And actually, we were having this discussion yesterday in the office because the majority of us here are SEND parents. And we've said, actually, we really love the fact that we are forced to learn more because, I don't know, it just becomes really enjoyable that you get to know the real ins and outs of promoting and protecting your children. So we've got tons of free downloads, by the way. You've probably seen me talk about all these amazing downloads all over our website. There's bits on the law, there's bits on anxiety and different presentations, developmental language disorder, DLD, that we've spoke about, exclusions from school, PDA and siblings, you name it, we've got them. Okay, there are hundreds of them. You can download them for free on our website, or like I say, pop into our hub if you're nearby. But another thing that I think is really, really important, so you've seen this one because I've shown you a few times this morning. On the back of that, again, available on our website, is the things that you need to look out for when you're checking your EHCP or IDP. So, you know, it's understanding the who, what, when, where, why, and how. Really useful resource. But But you will learn loads from our resources. And of course, if you have any questions about them, just get in touch. It's not a problem at all. But, you know, do use us. But these are going to be your best friends when you go through this process. Sorry to say. They really are very, very good resources. Now, if you're looking at your EHCP, you'll see that there's literally different sections. There's A, B, C, D on all the way up to I. So what is detailed in section B, for instance, is the special educational needs. So this is where it describes your child's special educational needs. Whatever is detailed in there also needs to be referenced in F, which is where the plan sets out the provision that's needed to meet the needs in B. Now, by all means, pick our brains, okay? We've got to look, like I say, I cannot stress enough how many resources and and sort of opportunities for help that we've got for you. You can also get health and mental health in section F, because actually, if it impacts on learning, I know with one of my children, in section F, she had a full complex provision on mental health, because without having that, she couldn't access her education. And F is legally binding, okay? BF and I, and another H. I can never remember which H, but we have talked about that before. So I do recommend that you upskill yourself for this process. Learn the lingo. You'll get taken far more seriously if you understand what you're talking about. And like I say, I cannot stress enough about these resources. They're free. Download them, use them, lean on us as much as you possibly can. Remember, our Sunshine Academy is amazing. I know I've spoken about it a little bit this morning, but it really is this stuff all the time. The stuff that we're talking about this morning, it's this stuff available 24/7. We started it a few years ago as just an online platform for learning, you know, just like a Netflix for send, as we like to call it. But it's become so much more than that, because there's a big community on there, like a private Facebook group, but on this learning academy. And you find that everybody supports one another. So we've got one for parents and carers, one dedicated to teachers, and everybody really supports one another. But also, if you didn't know, our advocates and experts are also on there, and they answer your questions. So if you ever thought, oh God, I wish I could just ask a Sunshine Advocate a question, I wish I could just have a minute with them, now you can. It's all on the Sunshine Academy. But they also do like these monthly clinics where you could actually join them. There's, you know, 15 to 20 in a room. You join them via Teams or Zoom. I can never remember which platform, but an online platform where you come face to face with your advocate, and you're able to just ask them questions. So they do an advice clinic, which is just fantastic. That happens once a month. I think we've got one coming up on the 20th with Gabby. There's lessons for children on there. There's guided meditation on there for adults and children, actually. We've got quizzes on there. We've got animated books. We've got a full film production team here at Sunshine. So we do as much as we possibly can to get film content, however that may look, onto the Sunshine Academy. There'll be courses you've never seen us advertised before, and they're all on there because we filmed them specifically and exclusively for the Sunshine Academy. So you'll never be alone on this journey whilst you're a member. So make sure you sign up. The team will share the link. Okay, I'm all talked out and I need a quick drink. So let's come to your comments. Oh, this is really interesting. Riley Gordon. Initially, I resented being forced to upskill, but now I'm happy I know the process. I'm a better parent and I use my knowledge to support other families. That is absolutely fantastic. And that's definitely how I felt when I started Sunshine, because I had my own business as a headhunter recruiter, and I just felt so underwhelmed by my work, having already gone through the process myself. And I thought, I know my process, I know my child, I know the way that our EHCP has panned out, and we've covered an awful lot, and probably all the stuff that somebody could possibly experience, you know, including 3 tribunals, a high court case, Section 47 investigations, social care proceedings, you name it, we went through it, FII accusations, but I still didn't feel that I was an advocate I got qualified and still didn't feel like I was an advocate, and so decided to build a team of advocates. And I must say, I absolutely love the fact that we now all work together, and I learn from them every day because they're all exceptional, our team. But an awful lot of them have come to this game because of their personal experiences. And I think that that personal experience really does make a huge difference, doesn't it, when you understand it because you've gone through it. Andrea says, do you have any pointers for an EHCP final plan that is interim EOTIS in section I, no package in section F, and despite chasing a case manager, absolutely no response, even failed to attend a child in need meeting? I know about tribunal, but anything we can do in the meantime. So this is a final plan with no package. So yeah, it would have to be an appeal. But I tell you what, Andrew, can you ping us a message? Or if you're on the Sunshine Academy, please do put a comment on the Sunshine Academy, because I can get one of the advocates who specialise in EOTIS packages to comment and give you some advice, because that is very, very specific and I don't want to get it wrong. And I also have more questions about it. So before I actually go giving you advice, I need more info. So either ping us a message and we'll do our best to get some information for you. Or if you're on the Academy, just comment and the comment will come, the advice will come far quicker. Let me see. Oh, we've got lots of people responding. Okay. Oh, Joe says, I think this is your son, ADHD, possible autism with PDA profile. I think that's what we've got to remember. Autism and ADHD is they're almost opposite things. And so if you have autism and ADHD, you can feel the clash in your brain. I've spoken to so many people who say that they want sort of law and order for their autistic brain, but absolute chaos for their ADHD brain. And there's inner conflict, which can sometimes then look like they go into the fight, flight, freeze response very, very quickly. And it can present as PDA or like PDA. And it is exhausting and it can be very expensive, but it will be worth it. I've not met a family who has spent as much as we did on our first case, but I must say it was worth it to get those few years of school and enjoyment for my child. Okay. Andrea says we've got a private diagnosis for our daughter due to the waiting lists. Yeah, a lot of people go down the private route. Barriers following diagnosis. There's no post-diagnosis support for autism and the impact of school trauma, isolation, and unmet needs. Absolutely. And we see this so much. And I must say that there is more support provided through that Right to Choose scheme. Again, do check out the Help for Psychology link. Vicky says we're struggling and we had inclusion funding in place for primary whilst we waited for an EHCP, had EHCP and they refused to issue. I've done the appeal. In the meantime, we've transitioned to year 7 and inclusion has run out. I keep asking for inclusion back. They're not doing it. She has SEN passes and social stories. EP reports states she needs support. She's been refusing school. This week, she's in a reintegration room. Okay. Loads to unpick there. I would definitely recommend the school contact us because we can help them with this. It doesn't need to be expensive to be able to make this an inclusive, truly inclusive provision. I think one of the things the schools struggle with is they think inclusive means included. They're two different things. Being made to feel welcome doesn't necessarily make something more inclusive. You can feel very welcome, but if the school climate is absolutely attacking your senses, that it makes you feel like you're in physical pain, doesn't matter how much kind the teacher is, those strip lighting, the temperature, the smells, the hustle and bustle of corridors is just not going to work. Reach out to us, Vicky. Drop us a DM. Let's get you some help. Oh, love this one, Gemma. Is it true that if a child is coping academically, they will not get an EHCP? Absolute nonsense. So my first child was destined for level 9s in her GCSE. So in old money, that's like an A star, top of the pops when it comes to academics. She still had one of the most expensive provisions that I've ever come across. So you're talking 250,000 a year for a residential specialist school. So it's absolute nonsense that if your child is academically performing, that they don't have SEN. I am yet to find a neurodivergent person who doesn't want to learn and who can't learn. So it's not about learning. But neurodivergence isn't a learning difficulty, so we need to remember this. It's nothing to do with cognitive ability. Kat says, my son is nearly 5. He was refused an IDP because he apparently matured from nursery. Wow. Has he got a house now and his own mortgage and about to graduate? He's now masking in school all day, coming home and having a Coke bottle effect. So for those who've not heard this before, this is where the child is effectively a Coke bottle in the school. So every interaction that affects them and dysregulates them shakes the bottle, but they don't feel safe enough to let that lid off. They let the lid off the minute they get home, and everybody at home receives the benefit of that, which is often not very nice. How do you get the school on your side for additional needs? He hates the classroom, but will tolerate it to fit in. And home life is horrific. How do you get the school on your side? They don't believe he's masking. Right, great question, because I've gone through this myself. And I think it's really, really tricky because it's about their understanding. They need to understand as a school, as a senior leadership team, that neurodivergence exists, that masking exists, how the brain processes anything that distresses it. So we've got that fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Now, if a child is fawning, they are people pleasing to get through a situation with safety. So they will say lovely things, they will perform as they need to in order to not be noticed, because they don't want to be punished. They don't want to feel like they're coming to any harm. If they freeze, they can often go mute, or they just stay quiet about something that they're very passionate about. They don't want to make a fuss. If schools don't understand this very basic brain development and brain science, which every teacher should know, in my opinion, it should be what they're taught first before anything else. If they don't understand it, then they need to understand it. Now, Kat, it's up to you what you want to do. It depends on the school. You can say to them, I would really love you to have a little look at Sunshine Support and what they're doing, because they really do explain this in very clear terms. We also have a load of resources. I know I've mentioned these before. We've got one on masking and fawning, sensory overload in school. You can take these into them, download them from the website. Anxiety in children, that will also be a very good one. But there's loads. There's absolutely loads. We've got one on masking and fawning. Aha, there we go. That's what we're describing here, masking and fawning. So download these and take them into school. Send them to them and say, look, I think this might be. And we always tend to address schools in a certain way. So you go in and you say, I'd really love your help with something, because I know that you've got my child's best interests as your focal point, as your priority, as do I. So it would be really great if we could discuss this together, because I have some real concerns. Take this with you and say, I've got a real strong suspicion that my child is masking and fawning. And we're really struggling at home as a result of it. And I know that there's no behavioural difficulties during the day, but this is very common with a certain profile. It could be that he's autistic or whatever. And you might see that they go, oh, okay, this isn't you saying it. This is someone else. Blame me. Say Chrissa Wadlow said. You could go on that vibe. You could take an advocate with you. I take an advocate into every single meeting I go into, because I can sometimes become selectively mute if I don't feel like I'm being understood, or I'm not being listened to. So I have an advocate here, and she comes into all of my meetings with me, and I tell her beforehand, these are the most important points, and she helps me to advocate that. So there's lots of different ways. The fact you've mentioned IDP means you're in Wales. We do have a lot of resources in Wales. Do make good use of them. We've got fortnightly cuppa and chats. They happen in Cunnan Link in Aberdare, which is quite easy to get to, and there's great parking there. We also fully fund a play session, a supervised play session at Role Play Lane in Pontypridd. And what happens there is that the staff look after the kids and play with them at Role Play Lane, which is a fantastic area, play centre, by the way. And whilst the parents gain some help and advice from our team, we've also got the in-person workshop next week, which is covering IDPs, but we also have a ton of resources online, and we also do online cuppa and chats as well. So you're welcome at all of those. The cuppa and chats, whether they're in person or online, are always free of charge. And so the play session at Role Play Lane is completely free of charge. We've funded that in advance so that parents can focus. So ping us a message if you can't find any of those links, and we'll absolutely help you. But don't suffer in silence. Now, I've come to the end of my Facebook Live and YouTube Live this morning. If I didn't get to your question, please send us a message. We will help you. Don't suffer in silence. I always say this. Use the resources, scroll through the comments and see some of the links that we've shared. We'll also update the links on the top of this video as well. Don't suffer in silence. Reach out. There is plenty of help available. You don't have to get to that point where you feel the system has failed your child. There is help available. We've got tons of stuff going on for you. We've got webinars every week. We've got all that on-demand stuff, a beautiful online community, a beautiful in-person community. Make good use of it. And good luck, because actually it's no mean feat having to navigate this process. It really, really is tricky. So find your tribe and stick with them. But let us know if you need any help. Have a fabulous day. Let's hope the sun continues to shine. See you soon.